Welcome to our new podcast, Incarcerated Minds, where we talk about criminality in the prison system and the injustices that happen inside the prison system and the causes and effects that criminals and their time in prison and the prison system has on them and their family members in hopes to bring a better light to the life and maybe help a few of our viewers out while doing so. My name is Tristan. This is my co-host.
Elijah.
Shout out to our other co-host, Mello. He isn't here right now. He will be in the coming videos that we record and post. This is...
My name is Christopher Yegley, a.k.a. Taz. I was sentenced to 235 months in prison, in federal prison, for conspiracy to distribute more than 1 kilogram of heroin, possession with intent to distribute same quantity. I spent 16 years of that 235 months throughout the federal prison system. And I'm here to share some of those stories with you.
So, where are you from originally?
From Peekskill, New York.
Okay. And did you have a big family or a small family?
I come from a large family. I'm one of 10.
One of 10. How many brothers and sisters?
I've got myself and 2 brothers and then 7 sisters.
And did your family have money or did you come from a poor family?
We grew up poverty stricken for the most part.
So I assume that had an impact on the choices that you made when you were a little kid. Did it?
Yeah, because my father put us through, there was different schools in Peekskill, different elementary schools, and where you lived determined what elementary school you lived in. So my father always wanted us to go to where the better people lived in Peekskill, the wealthier people. So in doing that, he probably didn't realize that he was putting these poor little kids in this wealthier school, and then there was going to be tension and you're picked on and you're seeing what other people have that you don't have.
Yeah.
And the effect of that is I want better.
Yeah. So when you were going to these schools, these kids would pick on you for, I assume, your clothes, not having the newest. I don't know. You're old, so
yeah.
Not having
the
newest toy they sold in the toy stores or something. So how did that make you feel when those kids picked on you? I mean, what did that cause you to do? I mean, were you depressed? Did you let them bully you for a certain amount of time, or was it an immediate just rebellion against the fact that they had more money than you and you were gonna either cause chaos or find a way to provide that type of lifestyle for yourself, even at that age?
Well, I don't know, because we grew up inside of Peekskill and we were like always one of the only white families around. So it probably started with fear because we were bullied in the street and we had to fight. And then we went to school and we were bullied by wealthier kids and picked on. So I would probably say around 2nd or 3rd grade is when something in my mind made me become the aggressor.
Yeah.
Become an aggressive person from that moment forward. Not willing to allow someone to talk to me like that, not willing to take anything from anyone.
Yeah. Was there like a specific scenario where you woke up and you were like, all right, this is the last time and I'm just not going to do this anymore?
No, there was just go mode.
Yeah.
It was go mode because I hung out with older kids. I hung out in the streets. We didn't have any rules. When you come from a poor family, most of the time the parents don't set boundaries or rules. So at 8 years old, I was staying out till 11, 12 at night.
At 8 years old?
Yeah.
That's
I was
absolutely
in the streets
insane.
at 8 years old. And, I look back now and I say, wow,
Yeah, 8 years old, that's crazy. I mean, I would be terrified at 8 years old to be just out in the middle of the streets at 1 a.m. in the morning. I mean, that's crazy. So were you doing anything at 8? at
Yeah, I
that point?
started. I think I started. The first crime I ever committed that I can remember was I had wanted these action figures, and I couldn't afford them. I didn't have any money for them. And another kid, an older kid I was with, stole from. This was James Way. It was kind of like a Walmart back then, and he had stole some stuff, and he was like, "Go ahead, get what you want." So I pocketed these action figures, and I was leaving, and I got caught by the security guard, and he took me home. He had the troopers, New York State Police, take me home. We were living in emergency housing, like a hotel at that time, and he brought me home to my father. That was probably the scariest thing. So I knew that there was a whipping coming.
Yeah, yeah. Did you get whipped?
Oh yeah, I got whipped. Yeah, I got whipped because it was embarrassing for him.
So, at what point did it move from just maybe stealing clothes or action figures to the next level of, this is sort of serious criminality?
Well, I would say the progression went from from stealing like that into always worried about CPS coming because you're dirty and you don't have any decent sneakers to wear. Your clothes are dirty. Your face is dirty. To wanting toys and bicycles, stealing bicycles out of people's lawns, and then riding those bicycles and never worrying about it. And from there, the progression that stayed like that probably from like 8 to 13, smaller, pettier stuff. And at 13, it was a rapid progression because that's when violence came.
Yeah, because you get bigger, you get stronger, puberty hits, and now you're not scared of the older kids.
Yeah,
So, and you're more willing to do stuff because you got hormones running through your veins, and
yeah. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid. I was a street kid. I
yeah,
wasn't afraid of it. There was nothing that I was afraid of. I used to. At that point, I wanted money. I wanted to be able to buy my own things at 12 and 13 years old, and I wanted nice pants and sneakers, and I wanted dirt bikes, and I wanted nice things. I wanted things that kids were allowed to get that my family couldn't afford. So one way that I started to get money like that is I would do strong arm robberies at 12 and 13 years old.
meaning like how would you do these robberies? What do you mean strong? Does that mean at gunpoint or
At that age, it was never at gunpoint at that time, that moment in our life. It was a baseball bat or a golf club, and I would sit and I would wait for people that were drunk or people that were walking home late at night. This was I would go down. We were living in Mohegan Lake, which is a suburb kind of Peekskill. It's an outskirt of Peekskill. So my aunt used to live in Peekskill. So on the weekends, I would act like I'm going to her house, but I was only going to her house because I could stay up late and wait them out. When they go to bed, I can go out at midnight, 1 in the morning, with a bat, like a stick, a knife,
yeah?
a golf club, and I could perpetrate these robberies against people.
What's the most you've ever gotten out of a robbery at that age? Doing those types of robberies. What's the craziest thing you've ever?
Well, when you're 12 years old, 13 years old, $500 is a lot of money.
This is
You
true.
know,
Yes.
I'd catch people with their paychecks, and then now I look back and I'm mortified. But at that time, I felt like that's what I had to do. That's the only way that I could get things that I wanted
Well,
to
I
have
feel
food.
I
And,
feel like when you're in that when you're in that situation, it's hard to feel for other people because you feel like nobody cares about you. So it's like, I don't even think it's a thought really of, and what am I doing to this person? It's more of the world doesn't care about me, so I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get the things that I want, even if it's materialistic.
yeah, I agree with that. It's a survival mode. I felt that I was in survival mode, and at that point in my life, I definitely didn't have any remorse for my actions.
Yeah,
There was zero remorse. It was survival of the fit, only the strong survive. And back then we were listening to early '90s hip hop. We were listening to gangster, that's what it was.
Yeah,
You hear people singing this, and we were living that life.
and the
Survival
fact
of the fit, only the strong survive.
and the fact that there was no cameras, it wasn't really a call the cops and let the cops take care of it type of world like it is today. You
No,
know,
they called the
as,
cops. They called the cops. The cops chased us many a times. I mean, I remember this is probably at 16. 16. I think I was probably like 15 or 16. And me and my friend robbed this guy, and we beat him up good. Like, we beat him up pretty bad. And the only thing we got was his Kennedy Fried Chicken. That's all we got. And I had a bright yellow bubble coat on. And we left, and I thought, man, I got to take this coat off. And I took the coat off and I stuffed it in a garbage can. And we're walking down the block. A block later, the cops pick me up. They grab me, and they take me in the car to where this guy was to have him line me to point me out. But because I didn't have that bubble coat on, I got away because he seen that bright yellow bubble coat.
that's crazy.
Wow. That sounds like a lot of crazy stuff, for a kid to go through, at being like 13, that's a lot of, like it's pretty scary. You say you were never scared for any of these type of, interactions?
Well, you get adrenaline. You're nervous. I wouldn't say scared. I wasn't scared. I was nervous.
Mm.
I was nervous more than scared because I would initiate most actions, even with my friends.
Wow.
I would be the one to initiate.
So you kind of got like akin to doing things like this.
Yeah, yeah. It became easy for me
Mm.
to not care, to not worry about what other people were feeling, to just
Mm.
worry about what I had to do to get through my struggle to make myself look presentable.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds like a lot of pressure to put on a kid. Like, how did you feel? Did your family know what you were doing at the time?
Yeah, when I was stealing, because I used to rob and I used to steal, I'd steal anything to make a dollar. I'd steal a lot of things, equipment, lawnmowers, snow blowers, quads, four wheeler, the dirt bikes, and we'd sell them. So my father was aware of it because I would come home and I'd leave money for them, and I'd give him money, or I'd put it in his truck, and because I wanted to help. I wanted to help my siblings have a little easier life than we had.
And did he like know where the money was coming from, or did it was kind of like more just not really worrying about it, just kind of comes and
No, he
not really
knew.
gonna look into it? You knew?
He knew, but there was no way to stop me.
Mm,
There was no way he could stop me. The
mm,
only way he could stop me was to turn me in and put me in some juvenile detention, which I would have got worse.
yeah.
Because that's what the system does. It makes you worse.
Mm,
Starts with CPS, and then it goes to the school districts calling CPS on you. And then you go to group homes, and they prepare you for the institutions, and then you're
mm.
in the institutions, and it's a snowball effect. It's not changing the outcome of your life at all. It's making it worse.
And the crazy thing is, I mean, there should be an institution to where kids that are in trouble, in actual trouble, in homes, because there are parents that are terrible parents that starve their children and abuse them. There should be an institution. That's what CPS is supposed to be, to help those children, but 9 times out of 10, all CPS is doing is coming for a kid that doesn't want to go to school, which is what most kids don't want to do, and then taking them and putting them in a system that turns them into something that they weren't before. And really, all they needed was maybe a little motivation or a little more discipline.
Absolutely.
Um, but so your parents never sat down and talked to you and tried to dis dissuade. I don't know if dissuade. Never tried to persuade you to not do the things that you were doing, or so it was just all right. He's going, and the only way we're gonna stop him is putting him in jails, and we're not gonna do that. So it's sort of let him loose.
No, no, they tried. My father was a. I was bad. I was bad. I was a troublemaker at home as well. So my mother used to make my father take me, and he was a handyman. So I'd have to go every weekend. I'd have to be with him. Every vacation from school, I'd have to be there working with him. So during those rides to and from work and at work, he would always try to tell me, what I could be and where I could go if I continued down the road that I was on. And he used to tell me that he worried that he would see me spend the rest of my life in prison if I didn't change course.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a weird situation because I had a situation where I was learning a trade, getting these life lessons, but then going out into the streets again. Not
Was there some sort of love for it, do you think? Like, at some point, did it become. I mean, it was more of a necessity for the matter, but at some point, do you think it became sort of like a passion? Like, you liked doing it?
later on, it did. Later on, it became more. I just like the street life. It just
Yeah.
calls you and it calls you. It taps on your window at night. But that wasn't then. Then. It was just he couldn't buy the things that I needed to have, so I had to go get them.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the money to buy those things. He didn't have the extras, and he tried because the greatest gift I ever got in my whole life was a dirt bike, and it was a 1988 Honda Fat Cat. And he actually did a job where he worked for free for the bike as a trade, and he brought that bike home, and that bike probably changed my life, for the most part, because I had something, and I used to love it.
Yeah. I don't think. I mean, I don't think a lot of parents realize the gravity of just small things like that when it comes to children. Because I think a lot of the times they focus on the fact that children change their mind so often. So it's sort of like, oh, he's going to use it for a couple weeks and then that's it. But I mean, there's a lot of things that simple things that have changed children's life and their way of life. Just the effort is a big portion of it, and I think part of you felt that because I mean, I'm sure you still go down in your life riding anyway, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know you do because you're my father. But
Yeah.
so when did so you're at robberies right now? You're getting people at night, beating them up. When did it go to the next level? At what age?
So it was kind of a blend. So when I was probably 15 or 16, I started trying to sell, like I seen drug dealers, right? And they're making money, they're driving nice cars. And I've got a car because I work and I stealing, I'm doing junk and metal, I'm doing anything I can to make a living to do something. I'm in survival mode. In my mind, I'm in survival mode. But now I see these people and they're selling weed and they're driving nice cars. So I tried the weed route first, and I used to pitch nickel bags of weed and in school and high school, but it was never lucrative for me. And then I went to, I sold powder cocaine for a little bit, then I'd go back to work and I'd work, you know, steady for 6, 7 months, but then it just wasn't paying all the bills. And so at 16, I got a girl pregnant, and I was turning 17 when I had my oldest son, your brother. He was born. I turned 17 a month after he was born. I think at that point I realized that I shouldn't be living at home, and I felt like I was a grown man, and that you don't bring a child to the house, which probably put more of a burden on my mind and on my shoulders than I realized at that time. I can look back and see it now. So I moved out and rented an apartment, and that put even more weight. Now I'm thinking I have to earn money. I just have to. I work, I go to school, high school still. And at night, I got to earn money. I'm more pressured. I'm seeing people. I was living in Newburgh at that time. We moved to Newburgh in 1997.
And what was that like?
1980. Newburgh was a different place. It was like the Wild Wild West. It was like New York City that we used to see in TVs in the 80s. There was graffiti everywhere. It was lawless. It was violent. It was people selling crack, coke, heroin right on the street corner, right in front of you. Right in the restaurant, when you order Chinese food, there might be a guy come in and put crack right on the table for somebody. So Newburgh appealed to me.
Yeah.
Like I found a place that I could just be whatever it is, as violent as I want it to be, as conniving, as manipulative, as whatever I wanted to be, I could be that in Newburgh. And I immersed myself in it. And it was like feeding a beast, because I would work, I taking care of the kid. You know, I got with your mother, my second lady, my future wife, and we were 17 and 18 years old with two kids and living in an apartment, and outside there's all of this drug money to be made. So, you know, I started selling crack and coke out of there for a little bit, and I was making a few dollars, but I really wasn't making a ton of money. And so I'm doing stick up robberies at night. I'm robbing drug dealers now, because I figured, why should I sell drugs when I could just go get a drug dealer, right?
Yeah.
It takes less work for me to go and get a drug dealer than it does for me to sit around and wait for customers. I just go get them and take all his hard work. And then
So tell us some of those stories about robbing drug dealers. Break down some of those moments.
Those are anybody who's ever done a home invasion type of robbery, a drug dealer robbery. You're not dealing with people, just regular people. That you're dealing with people that will kill, that they'll shoot you, they'll stab you. They want to protect what they have. So it's a different mind frame that you go in with. You go in like you're going to war, right? Understanding that you've got to go in and you might have to shoot them. They're probably going to shoot at you. And I did a few of those, and they're tough.
Yeah.
They're tough. You know, you got to kick the front door in. You got to go in there. You got to be ready to lay things down. You know, because you want the money, you want the drugs, and you don't want to hear anything about anything.
Do you have a specific? Do you have a specific one that you remember that comes to mind?
Those.
Okay.
We can't talk about those.
We can't talk about those ones, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
But no, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, the type of adrenaline that must hit you when you kick in that door and you don't know what you're walking into, unless you surveilled it. But I mean, how much surveillance can you properly do? I mean, you can only imagine what you're walking into with people that have just as much to lose as you do. I mean, you have less to lose because you're going in there. But
Yeah.
so I mean, and that's really the what it comes down to when it comes to, I mean, that type of environment of violence is the person who has the least to lose is the one that's willing to perpetrate the violence first, usually. So I mean, I can't imagine what was going through your head at that time. So did that sustain you and your family for the most part?
Nah, because it was more. You do a big jukes and you come off. You know, you hit, you score big, but then you know you're always looking for the next jukes, and it's always the next situation you're gonna put yourself in where you could die. So in all actuality, it wasn't easier to rob the drug dealer. In my mind at that moment, it was. It was easier to be the drug dealer.
Yeah.
Which is the next phase that I really went into, was I had to find a drug that suited me to sell. And in Newburgh at that time, heroin. Because there was tons of crack dealers. They were on every corner. There was 7 of them on every corner. They were everywhere. They were all over the place. Yeah. There was tons of weed deal. The Jamaicans had all of the weed spots. But there was only one really heroin dealer. There was only like one other heroin dealer.
And that's what you chose as your main. That's how you came to choose heroin as your main drug of choice to sell.
No, I kind of stumbled into it. My partner, his cousin, came up on like 600 or 700 grams of heroin. They used to come in these eggs and these little egg cylinders. So my partner gets these, and we don't know anything about them. We know nothing about them.
What does that look like? 700 grams of heroin in egg cylinders.
There's like a bag of these egg cylinders. It's the big bag of egg cylinders. I forgot how much we were paying his cousin per gram at that time, but we knew nothing about it. I didn't know anything about it. So now I got to figure out, how do I sell this? So I went and bought a bundle of heroin from somebody and looked at how it worked. And they're in these little glassine little envelopes, and there's a stamp on them. So now I got to figure out, how do I get this raw into these glassine envelopes, and how do I scale it? So we ended up using a McDonald's stirrer for your coffee. And it's like a little spoon on the end. And that's how we measured the heroin. There was a deli in Newburgh that sold glassine by the case, these little envelopes by the case. So I could go buy cases of them. And
do you think that they sold that for that specific reason? Was there any other reason why they would sell that?
No.
And this is a deli as in like a sandwich deli, or is it like a corner store deli?
Yeah, it's crazy because the deli that we went to was the first deli we used to buy sandwiches from when we moved to Newburgh. And I never knew, and they used to sell bongs and stuff, but I never knew that they had, in scales, but they had everything that you needed to package everything you needed. They even sold Scotch tape. So we would, our first foray into this, we knew nothing about it. So we took a big glass table, and we crushed it up with IDs, with razor blades and IDs. We'd crush it and keep crushing and scrape it all into piles, and then start bagging it with these and have tape. We had tape lined up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And we started packaging it. We started packaging it our way, and it was the wrong way, but we were doing it.
So was it did you make, well, first back to the deli. You know what's crazy is today when you'll go into smoke shops, and Elijah, I think we experienced this at the same time. You'll go into a smoke shop and they'll just be selling crack pipes or meth pipes just right on the shelf, which is insane because you think they want people to stop doing drugs, but I think the separation is you're selling glass. You're not selling the drug.
Well, they feel like they feel like they have the high road, but you don't have the moral high road.
Yeah, no, it's
just capitalism is what it is. You're still feeding someone's addiction, even though you're not selling the drug. You're selling the supplies of the drug. But I guess in your mind, you can justify and say that I'm not selling the drug.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's the same thing when you get into the drug addict and the drug dealer. I mean, they're both two consenting adults.
Yes.
I mean, there's no really separation in it.
There isn't.
Just one person providing, the other one consensually buying.
And the war on drugs will tell you that we're going to keep taking people that are selling these harsh drugs, but it's a lie. It's a farce, because when they arrested me, Newburgh didn't become a better place.
No.
Newburgh had 5 splinter people that came up to take my position.
There's always someone to come right behind you.
It's capitalism, pure and simple.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
And no matter how many ways they figure out to stop the people, they're gonna figure out a way to get right around them.
because the demand is there. If the
Yeah.
demand wasn't there, the supply wouldn't be there.
No, not at all.
And right now, you have we're going to war with the cartels. So now the supply won't be there. So the demand will pay more money for the supply when people smuggle it in.
Yeah.
All it is going to raise the prices on everything. It's like a tariff.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So was the money good when you first got into selling heroin?
It was great money. It was great money. It was the easiest money that I ever was able to make. And it was just, there was no one else doing it. It was me. And we set up an apartment. We had 3 apartments in a building. And one of the apartments, customers would come, and we had lines like the 80s down the street in the morning, 5 in the morning, knocking on the door, serving. People just coming in, bundle.
Just lines of people.
Lines of
That's
people.
not very incognito.
No, they weren't incognito, but Newburgh wasn't an incognito place.
Yeah, so you just felt it was normal. Just it wasn't out of place.
No.
What types of people came to you to buy?
Well, at that time, back in those days, it was mostly, hardcore addicts.
Yeah, and this is pre-fentanyl too.
This is pre-fentanyl. Yeah. This is pre, the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
The opioid epidemic was probably happening in the Middle East because people were doing pills all the time.
Yeah.
Right, but they weren't transitioning to heroin at this time. This was prior to all of that. Just the heroin, it was a different game because people get hooked on it. It's physical addiction. So they need it every day.
Yeah, their organs.
The supply and demand. The demand was always going to be there because people needed it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the difference when you go from drugs like weed to drugs like crack and heroin. Those people survive on it. When they wake up, they're sick and they need to go get that bag of dope. Otherwise, they're going to be going through withdrawals. When you're selling weed, it's more of just whenever they want it, they're going to come for it, so it's not as consistent.
Weed is more of a personality drug, right? To sell weed, you have to have a good personality.
Yeah.
People have to like you, and they want to call you and spend their money on it.
Yeah, they want to sit down and smoke with you, and yeah.
When you're selling heroin, people don't care what you're like. As long as you got the best product, you're going to get the customers. And at that time, the rest of the time that I sold heroin until I went to prison, I had the best product.
Yeah.
And I was one of 2 people up there that sold it. So clientele was always huge. It was always steady. It was always fast paced from the beginning to the end.
So what was your mindset while you were selling heroin when you were in your teenage years up to when you were doing home invasions? It was like, I don't have any empathy for the people that I'm committing these crimes against. Was it the same thing when you were selling to drug addicts?
No,
because the old saying, like, if you're selling heroin, you gotta be able to sell it to a pregnant lady.
No, I never.
Not saying that you did, but I'm saying that's
another
the saying.
farce that people, these politicians and these cops and all these people, they want to perpetrate a farce. They want to lie. It's a lie, because most drug dealers won't sell to a pregnant woman. Most drug dealers,
I think so. I think
selling to little kids. A little kid comes up to buy you
absolutely
drugs.
not. Yeah.
You're not selling them drugs.
No.
I
I think most drug dealers have that sort of morality where they look at that person and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Like, get off my doorstep." Even if it's in a mean way, like not being nice and saying, "Oh, you could do better," but get off my doorstep because you're pregnant. Like, what are you doing with your life?
The worst
I'm not selling it to you.
The worst I ever seen, and I didn't do it. My partner would sell heroin to a woman who came with 2 of her kids in the car. And he sent me to her one time because he wasn't around. Said, listen, she needs something. So I went to see her. I don't remember what she needed. But I remember walking up to the car and seeing 2 little kids in the back. And I looked at her and I said, I can't. You gotta get out of here. And she said, what do you mean? I'm just gonna, I need it. I'm gonna go somewhere else. I said, you gotta go where you gotta go. I'm not selling you anything. It's not what I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
you know?
So with this newfound business in your early 20s, I'm assuming, mid 20s, late
It was
20s.
early. It was all through my 20s.
Okay, all through your 20s. How was life like having this massive influx of money, being the only one of two distributors in a decent sized city, and just having this money in your throughout your 20s? What was life like? Was it
It was
crazy
easy.
fast?
It was easy. It was fast. It was
Did you
nice. I
party
mean, we
like?
partied. We partied like a 20-year-old would party. 19, 20-year-old kids would party.
Tell us some of
We
those stories
bought
about those
we
parties.
bought we bought we bought fancy clothes nonstop. We I wasn't into jewelry, but I had jewelry. We had big parties. We were living that life. I had a nice car. Life was easy.
Mm,
We were all having a good time doing it.
mm. Now, I'd imagine you doing all these things like robbing drug dealers and selling heroin. You would probably be making a little bit of a name for yourself out in like your community. What was their reactions? Like, did you notice people start maybe looking at you different?
Well, Newburgh again is Newburgh was even worse than Peekskill, right? So Newburgh, I was the only white family that lived there,
Mm,
within like 20 blocks or something. So
mm,
Newburgh is a violent city. So in order to sell drugs in Newburgh, you got to make a name for yourself. And I started making a name for myself like at 17 in Newburgh. I started making a name with guns, with shootouts, with turf wars, with just going for it all, because I felt like that's what I had to do, because I was a white kid in an all black and Spanish community,
mm,
and I was getting money,
mm.
and you got to lay things down. That's just what it is.
Yeah,
That's just what it is.
yeah. And you were talking about how you were one of the two big distributors like in your area. Was there ever like any conflict between you and the other person, like cause any conflicts or anything?
Nah, he never. They never strayed toward our side of town, and we didn't go to their side of
Oh,
town.
it's like more your own
Yeah,
areas.
we had
That's
our
like,
area. They had their area. They had, you know, Newburgh wasn't just the people that live in the city of Newburgh that came to us. It was all of the countries, like all of the suburbs of Newburgh would
mm,
come down. So our clientele pool was huge. It was big. So there was room. There was room for anybody. There was room,
mm,
you know. And when we first started selling heroin, we didn't realize how big the clientele pool was.
mm-hmm,
We were young, inexperienced, just getting money. And as the years are going by, we're learning a lot more as we go. We're learning how packaging has to be right. We're learning how to cut it. We're learning how to market it better, stamp it better. We're learning all of these things. We're learning as we're going. And in the middle of learning all of this, we're going to war. Well, I'm going to war for the most part. I never personally really, it was more the friends I had around me that had more problems than I had, and I would be out there frontlining. You know, you got to
mm,
frontline. You
yeah,
need people to know that you mean what you say, and you're gonna do what you say you're gonna do. And
yeah.
that's what I had to do in Newburgh.
Mm, okay, okay.
Um, so when you say, so do you have any stories of maybe a squabble or a turf war that you can share with the viewers?
Yeah, I got a
Maybe
few of
maybe a
those.
crazy incident.
Yeah, I got a few of those. I got a few of those. So Broadway in the city of Newburgh is this big, large road. It's 4 lanes, and there's stores all down Broadway on both sides. And in the early 2000s, there would be, thousands of people on Broadway, hundreds, they do tons and tons of people, 24 hours, all
Mhm.
night long. You'd see people walking up and down. And I lived on a side road called Clark Street. It's right off of Broadway. And so we're outside, we're sitting in front of a car, and this dude just keeps riding his bike back and forth, and he's saying slick stuff. He's saying slick shit. So I asked him, "Hey, what's up, bud? What are you doing? You keep coming back around. What's up? Is there a problem? We got some type of problem?" And he was like, who the fuck you talking to, white boy? And I said, "I'm talking to you. What's up?" And he rode up the hill, up the street to Broadway. And like 5 minutes later, Broadway cleared out. There was no one on Broadway. And they came down south of Broadway and north, and they formed a horseshoe up into Clark Street. Probably 100 people. And there was a dude. There was a guy that was frontlining that. And it wasn't that guy. He was frontlining. He had a big purple pimp hat on. Like he was a pimp. And I started letting loose with an AK.
He's just firing into the crowd.
The guy's hat blew off his head. His bullet sparks flying everywhere. I'm shooting the car up. Everybody's running and screaming. We ended up, getting back in the house, and the dude on the bicycle ends up being a rat. He comes with the police. He's in the center of like 60 police. They come into my apartment and they pick out the wrong guy. They pick out my buddy for doing the shooting. One of my bros. They pick him out, and he wasn't even wanting to do the shooting.
And were you standing right there?
I was standing right next to him.
Were you shitting your pants?
Of course. I just unloaded an AK-47 out there.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's diabolical. Nah. So that's a name right there. It doesn't matter what skin color you are, you'll know.
Another crazy. This was a crazy story. We were outside, and I tell my two partners, I'm like, "Yo, I'm going upstairs. I'm gonna get something to eat." So I go upstairs. I'm cooking something, and my apartment was at the front, so you could see the street. And I hear like people yelling. So I look out the window and I see my two partners. They're arguing with some guys. So I grab my lamp. I had one of those tall.
Yeah.
I'm not describing a pole lamp.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a weapon at that moment. I rip my lamp out of the wall and I run down. I unscrew it, so I got the pole, and I come around the corner, and one of my boys, the guy got him by his coat, by his neck, and he's got a sword, a Japanese, like the dog could, and he's got it in his stomach, and he's trying to rob him for all his work. And I'm like, oh shit. And then the other guy has got another sword, and he's got my other
They both
partner.
have swords?
Yeah, they both got swords. Yeah, they got katana. They're sitting there with samurai looking swords. And I'm like, oh shit. And I grabbed the pipe, and I rushed the dude that had the sword, and he got nervous, so he backs up just a little bit. I hit him with boom, and he runs. He jumps into a car, and that was it. We were all over the car. I broke every window out of the car. I grabbed cement blocks. I'm throwing them through the window at him because he was trying to kill him. For the work.
That's absolutely. And your buddy didn't have anything on him to
protect
himself?
He had to work. He had nothing to protect. He had the work in his hand, and the guy was fighting with him for the work.
Oh, so these were drug addicts.
These are drug addicts.
They tried to rob him with a katana sword.
Two of them.
That's crazy.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was late at night, and we were out there.
Just fighting with katana swords and poles.
Shout out to my boy Mel Ski. He's the one that had the katana.
That's Uncle Mel Ski.
And Spliff. Man, Spliff.
Mel might be on this show. He could talk about those days too. So at what point did he get so big that you were started being watched by the feds?
See, I was in and out. I was heavy, but then I would start doing contracting work because I learned that from my father. And I was renovating all of these buildings in Newburgh. and like I was becoming a community name as well as a street name. The community portion is, I was dealing with developers and council people and mayors and talking to them about renovation and changing the city and moving the different dynamics, but I was still had my toes in the street.
Wait, so you were involved with mayors and councilmen? It was at this
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, at that point, yeah, because it was like I was able to take that hat off at night. Every night I would come home, I would help my wife put the kids to bed, and then I would take that hat off and I'd hit the
Yeah.
streets. And so I wasn't actively all the time during the whole tenure selling drugs. I would get in, I would blow all the way up. I would take that money, I would buy a building or invest it somewhere, and I was just trying to grow too fast because I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have anybody to teach me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I'm growing, I'm dealing with, real regular people, and I'm able to speak with them and meet with them, and they never had an idea. The police department was always investigating me the whole time.
Do you think that's why though? Do you think that those people didn't have an idea because you thought that? Because I can't imagine that. Because I assume that they were pretty older than you, right? You were in your
Yeah.
late 20s, early 30s at this
No, I
point.
was in my mid 20s,
You were in your mid 20s,
early to mid
buying
20s.
buying buildings, accumulating these sums of money, while only working 9 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year in construction. You don't think that these people maybe just at some point thought, this is a little weird
No,
that this that
because
this young kid that lives in the city is able to do these things
I never ever drove
with
a
no
nice car.
educational background.
I never drove a nice car, ever, not one day. I never during the day had nice clothes on. I always had work clothes on because I was legitimately working, renovating buildings
Yeah.
on Broadway in Newburgh. So it was hard for them. The police knew, and the police would tell them sometimes, "Hey, listen, we think he's into something. We know he's into something," but they didn't really know. They didn't really know.
Yeah.
They assumed, and the last time that I dove back in was the longest I did it consistently.
Yeah.
Consistent meaning every single day of the week. I'm pushing, and I have the construction company. Construction companies producing. I'm producing over here on the side, and that's when it wasn't the feds really never got involved with that portion of it. The Newburgh Police Department sicked the feds on me because they could never get a case against me
Yeah.
because they can never get the state relies on what's called a buy and bust. They send an informant in, the informant purchases something from you, then they come and grab you right away, or they'll make multiple sales and then they'll come and grab you, charge you with those felonies. The feds don't need to do that. They can use confidential informants, their statements, their witness testimony to prosecute you. So the state could never get to me because I had people that were working for me. I had steady clientele that I had for years and years.
Yeah.
So they could never ever infiltrate my group ever. They had to do it on a humbug, which is arresting my co-defendant and then piggybacking and taking me and adding me to his indictment
Yeah.
with
And
witness testimony.
so why did the Newburgh police hate you so much? I mean, why do they still continue to hate you so much? What was the relationship between you and them throughout the years that built that sort of quarrel?
Because they were crooked.
Mm-hmm.
Newburgh Police Department would pull you over and beat you up. And I just didn't allow it ever. I just never, they beat my cousin up and my brother-in-law real bad, and I got the footage and I did press releases for it. So I had my hand in the cookie jar and then in the hornet's nest at the same time, and you never want to do that, right?
Yeah, so you were going after them politically.
Yeah, I was
and
going after them
yeah.
politically. I'm doing all this activism stuff, but at the same time, I'm selling all of these drugs, and
which is not a
to
good
no, it's not a
equation.
good combination. So they targeted me. I
Yeah.
was a full target, and they were going to do whatever they could, whatever they had to do, whatever lying, deception, everything they had to do, they were going to do to get me.
Yeah, and this was before a time where you had things like iPhones and
Yeah.
cameras everywhere. So any sort of accountability towards, law enforcement, there was just none.
It was
So
none. So they hated me then, and they continued to hate me because I just wasn't with it. If they did something wrong to me, I filed civil complaints. I took pictures and photographs, and I did whatever I had to do to hold them accountable.
yeah.
And I just knew then I had such a big ego that they could never get me.
Yeah.
Right? My ego was so big that, oh man, they can't get me. I didn't know anything about the feds. I didn't know that.
Well, you're a 25-year-old. I mean,
yeah.
everybody's ego is tremendous at 25.
And I never knew anyone that went to the feds. I never knew anyone that got arrested with the feds.
So there wasn't a feeling in your heart like they're gonna get me at some point.
I think that there was that feeling. You always said when you're selling drugs and committing crime, you have to face that. But in the state, like my friends, a lot of my friends had felonies, but they went and did like a 1 to 3, and they went to a boot camp, and they got in shape, and they came home. It was like a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, so it wasn't that big of a
deal. Here I am thinking, all right, I got a little year and a half, 2 years, I can handle it. I get 1 felony, never do it again. Because then you become a predicate. When you become a predicate, 2
that's
felonies,
when they start adding.
That's when they start hitting you with big time. So my whole mindset was I could sacrifice 1 felony in my life. I could sacrifice that because I'm only going to get a little 1 to 3 or 6 months in county jail, 5 years probation. Yeah. Never in my wildest imagination could I have thought that I was going to get 20 years.
So you're cooking now as much as you've ever done before. The Newburgh police are hot on your tail because you're fucking with them, and so they're gonna fuck with you, and they can't get you, so they sick the feds on you. At what point in time do you know that the feds are on you, or did you just never know until the day they called you until the day they got you?
No, I didn't know until the day they arrested me.
So you didn't have any inclination that there was a federal case against you?
No, none.
Even when your co-defendant
my co-defendant got arrested by the state, but he was in possession of guns, and he was in possession of guns as a felon. They always give those to the feds. So when he caught a fed case for the guns, I didn't think anything of it. He didn't think anything of it. We thought that he just had a federal drug and gun case, right? It's nothing. It's on him. I didn't know anything about conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay. So talk about the day that the feds got you. I mean, what happened from morning to the time you were in cuffs?
Oh, that was a pretty crazy day. So my mother lived across the street from me, and she used to sit at the window and smoke cigarettes. And she calls me up. She goes, "Hey, there's a detective down the street parked in a driveway." And I look out the window and I see the car, but I want to know where they're looking at. And I can't see it. I just can't see that far. So I need binoculars. So I call somebody up and I say, "Hey, let me borrow your binoculars." And he says, "Yeah, come get them. So I get out, I jump in the car, I go down the hill. The detective's gone now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, whatever, he left, but I'm gonna have binoculars in case he comes back. I drive from Upper South Street in Newburgh to Du Bois Street. It's probably like 10 blocks. I make a right onto Du Bois Street. I drive up 2 more blocks, and all hell breaks loose. There's cars. They're parked. They're hitting. They're cornering me and box me all in. They're outside with all of their, their AR-15s, all their tactical gear is on.
The godforsaken gun,
Yeah, they got the SWAT team right there. They're all surrounding the car. I'm like, "Hey, man, you got me." I ain't doing nothing wrong. What are we doing here? Don't worry, I don't have nothing on me. They pull me out of the car. They take me to the precinct, and when we're walking into the precinct, the ATF agent says, we're the feds. We don't come and get you unless we got a case. And I say, yeah. Fuck you. You don't have anything on me. There's no way you have anything on me. And they bring me inside. They bring me into a room, and he says, listen, we know that you're not going to talk to us. You're known for that, for not talking. We've talked to other police departments about you, and but we're going to give you a chance. And I'm like, there's nothing for us to talk about. You guys don't have anything on me. There's nothing for us to talk about. Like, I'm not. Just take me to jail. They bring me downstairs, and they put me in a bullpen, and I'm waiting. And in Newburgh, you don't go to Orange County Jail. They take you to Westchester County Jail. Westchester County Jail is the holdover for the feds. So they take me down to the marshals. They piss test me. They fingerprint me into the federal marshals, and they take me to Westchester County Jail and put me on a fed block.
Yeah. And so at this point, you're so when you get into that jail, what were you thinking? Were you still thinking like they don't have anything on me? I'll be out within a couple weeks? Or
Yeah, 100%. I also didn't know at that time that you couldn't get bail in the feds. It was almost impossible to allow you to bail because they don't want you to be able to. If you're out, you can prepare your defense to fight them.
Yeah.
If you're in there, you're under so much immense stress that it's hard to prepare a defense.
Yeah, and I'm sure the
you
lack of resources.
The lack of resources, the law library, the lack of communication with your lawyer. You don't get to see him, talk to him. It's all bad. It's real bad.
Yeah, I mean, the presumption of innocent until proven guilty.
Oh, that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a farce too.
Yeah.
You're guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yeah.
And
I think it's even, I don't know how it was back then. I was a child, but I think it's even worse today. I mean, it's horrendous that even because of the media today is what I mean, and social media. As soon as you're put on stage, everybody throws tomatoes at you without even knowing whether you did the crime or not. I mean, it's insane. You have, it coming from social media, and then the mainstream media, and then the government. So it's coming from all sides, and I don't see how you can have a defense to that, especially in a country where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
No, it's tough. It's a tough. Feds have a 98% conviction rate because everybody pleads guilty for the most part. But even at trial, they have a 99% conviction rate of the 2% that go to trial because their evidence is so stacked against you that it's so broad what they get to admit versus what the state gets to admit that you're almost guaranteed to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So when you're in there fighting, so first I fought for bail, right? And as with the feds, you really should just go in there. What they want you to do is break your will to fight. And most people just go in there, cop out right away. And when you don't cop out right away and you try to get bail, things just get worse.
Mm-hmm.
The charges get worse. They're gathering evidence still. Their investigation really starts the day they arrest you. So they come and arrest you under information. Their investigation starts the day they arrest you. They start squeezing witnesses and debriefing them to pull in all the information that they can gather against you. So when you start fighting against them, they start unloading all of that into the indictments, superseding indictments, start steamrolling and stacking. And your time's growing as that's happening.
Yeah.
So, what was your reaction to getting into the system into the federal system? Like, is it different from?
It is. It's different because in the county jail, I spent 18 months in Westchester County Jail. Fighting the case, going to trial, being sentenced, and
I want to get on the before we get into him going in the federal prison. I want to save that for the next one. How was it going to trial against the feds?
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's the whole. You sit down at a bench. and the seal of the United States is up there, and it's the whole United States of America against little old you.
Mm-hmm.
Little old you in a courthouse with the whole country. They represent the whole country, and they're against little old you. And they try to destroy your entire soul, your will to fight. And I just always remember just moving forward. Nah, I can't take it. There's no evidence. I can't take it. I just can't accept. I cannot lay down. Yeah, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of something, but what am I guilty of? These people with their lies and their deception and how they're portraying their story. See, because it's a story. They tell their story. You tell your story. The jury gets to listen to two stories and it gets to believe what it wants to. But they get to stack the deck, and the jury only gets to hear their story for the most part. The defense doesn't get to tell their whole story. So you're fighting these people, and it's all stacked against you. The judge is ruling in their favor nonstop. You can't win a motion with these people. Everything you think you're going to win that's going to give you the edge, the house takes it away. So they always have the edge. It's like a gambling house.
Yeah.
It's just like a casino. They always have the edge. They always have it.
Yeah.
You always get ruled. Like, you do these motions that, all right, I want to suppress this piece of evidence, and I have all this case law to back me. Then the judge will come in and say, no, you can't suppress it because of this. Like, for instance, I had a suppression hearing for a cop saying he seen me throw narcotics. But because what they call exigent circumstances existed, the judge actually ruled that windows in buildings in a city create a circumstance where the cop can fear for his safety and fear for the evidence because he doesn't know who's in all of those buildings and all of those windows.
In a city?
In a city.
It's just surrounded by windows.
So you're on a block, right? And you're in these buildings, and there's windows all over you. There's no neighbor, right? There's neighbors everywhere. There's no yards, right? It's all buildings.
Yeah.
So if a cop, that created a circumstance where the cop can do a warrantless search and a warrantless entry onto your person and your property because he feels that the evidence he wants to seize and the person he wants to search is at risk of unknown dangers. It's called exigent circumstances.
Wow. So it's like you're fighting an uphill battle the whole time.
Entire
basically.
time. You're fighting. That's exactly what it is. You're uphill.
It is an uphill
You're
battle.
bobbing and weaving, uppercut, and you're trying to get out the best you can, you know. And so I get all the way to the end. I fight this uphill battle, and we get all the way through trial, and the trial's long. It's 6 weeks, and the jury. I was acquitted in the state of New York for part of my charge. And the feds got to repick that up under a principle called dual sovereign, where they derive their powers separately in the Constitution. So it's not double jeopardy. They get to retest the evidence. The witnesses get to retestify. The evidence gets retested. You're back at trial for that. Mm-hmm. So my whole thing was the only piece of evidence that they had against me was these drugs this cop allegedly seen me throw, which he didn't. I really didn't throw them. So I beat that in the state already. So I know that if I could beat that in the feds, I have this case won and I know it. Mm. But I can't talk to the jury. I can't tell the jury that I had a trial already. I'm not allowed to let the jury know that I was already acquitted of this. Because if you're on a jury and you know somebody's already been acquitted, you're saying to yourself, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. Why am I here if another jury already found this guy not guilty?
Yeah. And
they said that would taint the jury, which it will because it's right.
Yeah.
Right is right, wrong is wrong, fair is fair, but not injustice. So we get all the way to the end, and we have 3 days of deliberations. And I remember the marshal saying, man, I think you won this. We have never, ever seen jury deliberations go this long in a drug case. This is the longest we've ever seen a jury deliberation. And at the last day, a jurist sent a note out asking if they had to be unanimous against me. And we just knew we had a hung jury right there. And the judge told them, yeah, you got to do that. You got to be unanimous. Go back and be unanimous. Mm. And They came out and convicted me. And the next day, one of those jurists, a lady from the Bronx, sent a letter in saying, listen, man, I didn't want to convict him. I was forced by the jury foreman to write that guilty verdict.
That's disgusting.
And
What?
and I just knew there again, justice is going to prevail, right? It didn't prevail here, but I have an appeal. I'm going to win an appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I never won one thing ever. Ever one thing, never one thing did I win.
Wow.
Never one appeal, never one motion, I never won anything. They
And
give
she was
you
forced
nothing.
into doing it.
Yeah, she was forced into doing it, and the judge justified it in his own mind, and the appeals court upheld his justification.
Absolutely.
Because I was, I didn't have a zillion dollars to pay.
To keep going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the feeling? Well, the feeling that you felt when you realized, like, damn, I don't know if I can get out of this
It was the end of the world.
in the world.
Yeah, I received 20 years, and I seen that my family is going to be gone. My kids are going to be grown when I come home.
Mm.
It was the end of the world. I was destitute. It was over.
Mm.
All the money I had amassed, everything that I had accumulated was gone. It was all over. I was left in there penniless with nothing.
Yeah.
So it was like my whole world just crashed all around me. And now I got to figure out, how do I do the time? How do I make it through this next part, this next journey? Because that's what it is like a long tunnel, and you're trying to chunk that tunnel off to get through it. And that's what I had to figure out, was how do I do it?
Mm.
I figured it out.
Mm.
Well, I think that's a good point to end it, because I want to get into your time, day one of prison, in the next episode. Just a proclaimer on this podcast: we do not condone or what's the word? Don't do crime. Don't go to prison. It's not fun. It's not good for anybody, yourself or your family included. And we don't condone it on this podcast. And have a blessed day.
It's a disclaimer,
That's
not a proclaimer. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, I
disclaimer.
knew something sounded off with
It's a
that.
disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
There we go.